This is video 2 in a 3-part series. Make sure that you've watched video 1 on where we are making the embellishments and the corresponding video 3 in which we're making the actual art journal page. In this video, we're going to be picking and choosing papers to print to use in our art journal project. We are using a kit from Angie Young Designs, and I'll show you that kit in just a moment before we get started. Let's take a moment to talk about printing papers. Whether you're printing for scrapbooking or for hybrid art journaling, you're going to want to keep in mind a plan. There's a lot of different ways that you can print. I'm going to be working with the Begin Again papers from Angie Young Designs, and those are available from O-Scraps. So she's got these wonderful artsy pattern papers. And when I click on one to print, you'll see that it kind of fills the page. Now, I don't have a 12 by 12 printer. I have an 8.5 by 11 Canon Pixma printer. So that means when I click to print that I'm going to lose some of that 12 by 12 design because obviously I'm printing a rectangle and not a square. If you want the full square, you're going to unclick the option to fit picture to frame. And you'll see now you've got the full 12 by 12 print. Now it's not going to obviously print 12 by 12 because you have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. But you will get the full design for you to work with. You've got to get a little creative, and I'll show you some of that later on when I'm art journaling and when I'm scrapbooking, how you can compensate. But for now, this gives you kind of an idea of printing. So again, not fitting the picture to the frame, fitting the picture to the frame. Now, if you don't like the orientation of the design or you're missing parts of it, you can come into the image and you can select to rotate the image around. And you can kind of play with that until you get enough of the image in that 8.5 by 11 sheet to print. So this gives me a slightly different view of that paper. There will be a little bit of waste on the side, and that's going to vary depending on your type of printer and on how you're printing the image. What I do with the waste, I keep it's usually the matte presentation paper or a matte photo paper that I'm using. I go ahead and I save it for using on my scrapbook layouts, and in my art journaling I journal on it. I love to use journaling strips, so I try not to waste any of the paper that's left over when I cut that pattern paper out. You have a couple of print options. Another one would be to select multiple sheets at one time, and when you click print, you can then print in 4 by 6, 5 by 7, you can get 3.5 by 5, and you can go down all the way to thumbnail size. Now the same thing applies here as it did with the full 8.5 sheet. This is fitting the picture to the frame. If I unselect that, you'll get a smaller square version of that complete sheet of paper. I don't often use this particular method because you get a lot of waste. You can see a lot of white around the edges, and I try to prevent that as much as possible. Another option for you is to go into Photoshop and you create a new document. This is an 8.5 by 11 inch size document, and then you just place the papers onto here. And then you can size them down and make your own collage, different size papers, and you can eliminate some of that waste. Now some printers will also have a collage option, and that'll kind of help you out as well. If you know that you want one of these as a shape, let's create a new blank file, and we'll draw, say we want a bunch of circles. So we'll just draw a few circles. And we can clip the paper to it. There we go. And we can just move that around until we get it the right size for what we want to show. We can then export these as a PNG file that we can cut in our silhouette. So I would just save these as a PNG and export them to the silhouette and then cut the circles with the pattern paper already on it. And that just saves me a step from having to punch it. So essentially what you need to do when you are printing, you need to have a plan in place. You need to kind of have an idea of how you're going to use the papers, how much of the papers you're going to use, and what sizes you want them. You can always come back and print more, but we don't want to be wasteful if we don't have to be. So I'm going to make my decisions about my project. I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to print some papers and then get back to you with making the actual art journal page. Don't forget, there are 2 more videos in this series. You'll find the links to those in the notes for this video. You'll also want to hop over to the OScraps blog to check out the complete article.